It's been a quiet few weeks on the old video game front, so in search of interesting new things to play, I thought I'd download the Wii U exclusive beta test for Lost Reavers. But in hindsight, I probably should have just gone for a walk instead. The idea behind the game seems simple enough. Teams of up to 4 players work cooperatively to steal a mysterious treasure called a relic from various multi-roomed dungeons. These dungeons are filled with assorted traps, puzzles, and undead terrors. Once the relic is in a player's hands, the whole team then needs to hot-foot it back to the exit in order to extract the relic and complete the mission. This all sounds very promising, kind of like Left 4 Dead if it was mixed with Payday 2, so really it should be awesome, right? Well, no, I'm afraid not. Everything about Lost Reavers feels outdated, from the terribly simplistic graphics and unimaginative level design, right through to the clunky controls and the 4 ridiculous player characters that the developers have yoinked straight out of the 90s. According to the opening crawl, these 4 Lost Reavers are the only people able to handle the relic without coming down with some kind of deadly lurgy, and because of this they are, and I quote, humanity's only hope. Trouble is, these saviours of humanity look like the worst bunch of heroes ever, and certainly they're the last people I'd entrust the survival of the human race to. There's a generic army dude whose back pocket holds a comical amount of firearms, a Poundland Jason Voorhees, a woman who runs like an idiot pretending to be an aeroplane, and a Japanese schoolgirl whose default uniform consists of this ridiculous white shirt and camel toe combo. Camera controls are sluggish at best. Even with sensitivity increased, it feels like you're wrestling with the aim, especially in first person, which, by the way, has no aim down sights option, even for scoped weapons. There is a generous aim assist to help with the poor controls though. Holding down ZL will allow you to lock onto the nearest enemy and spam the attack button until they fall down and blow away like a pile of autumnal leaves. Aiming is so tragically clumsy though that the majority of players online seem to gravitate towards the axe-wielding Poundland Voorhees, who is an expert at melee combat. This is because each melee attack has an area of effect that surrounds the player character, allowing you to hit enemies from all angles while only facing in one direction. It means you don't have to waste precious time fighting with the thumbsticks in order to go toe-to-toe with a bad guy. But it all feels a bit cheap doing it that way. I mean, just look how I was able to defend myself while I was unlocking a door. I didn't even need to turn around. My forward melee attacks connected with anyone approaching from behind, and that just goes to show how sloppy the gameplay in Lost Reavers really can be. Okay. Another big failure with Lost Reavers comes from its level design. A dungeon crawler needs interesting dungeons, and in this beta at least, that is not the case. Rather than the sprawling labyrinths I expected, the 2 levels in the beta comprise of 3 to 4 sparsely decorated rooms, connected more often than not by warp zones rather than corridors. Half fill those rooms with copy and paste bad guys that lazily teleport in from God knows where, and what you've got is a game that wouldn't feel out of place on a budget PS1 release. Puzzles in the dungeon are predictably weak as well, and they boil down to pushing a thing to another thing, pushing a button and waiting for a bit, or destroying a certain amount of things to open an exit. Again, it's just so basic. The gameplay itself feels more like a relic than the actual item you're after. The game is peppered with dumb design decisions as well. For instance, you can't invert the controls until the end of a 10-minute tutorial. So, if like me, you play games properly, you'll have to struggle through until you unlock the hub room, which then gives you access to the settings menu. Things don't get much better online either. It's tricky enough to find a full match, but when you do finally manage to scrape a 4-person team together, frame rate issues and player lag just add to the mounting frustration. Oh, and there's no in-game voice chat, which for a 4-player co-op game is something that probably would have been a useful addition. To cut a long story short, the Lost Reavers should probably stay lost. It's an ugly, joyless mess of a game that would have been rubbish 10 years ago and is completely unforgivable now. Do your Wii U a favour and keep it off your hard drive, because you'll only end up deleting it after a couple of goes anyway. Oh, well, that wasn't a very good game, was it? Luckily, we do cover some good games here on Eurogamer, so why not check out this video that Chris has done? It's an interview with the developers of Planet Coaster. That looks like that's going to be a very good semi-spin-off sequel to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. I chatted to Nick Burkham, the developer of Wipeout, about his new game, TTR World Tour. I played that at Res, got some gameplay, that's all in that video. That's a very good game as well. I enjoyed it. And finally, if you fancy watching a couple of grown men wander around with a helmet on their heads, you can check out Chris D and Chris B playing Out of Ammo, the new game from Daisy creator Dean Hall, which looks super cool. I really want to go on it, but the Vive is in the office and not at my house, so I don't think I ever will. Oh.